Well, welcome everyone to today's Making Sustainability the Focus event, and thank you all for joining today. My name is Will Hargreaves and I'm the Environmental Policy Lead at the Greater Birmingham Chamber of Commerce. I'm very excited, and I know you all will be too, to hear from our expert sustainability professionals today who are very kindly offered to present. But before I do that, I'd like to mention some upcoming events that you may wish to attend. On Friday, 8th of June, we have our Future Faces and Greater Birmingham Chamber of Commerce Speed Networking event. This is really an opportunity to grow your network and business connections. On the 15th of June, we'll have game storming, creativity and innovation as part of our Aston Business School leadership series. On the 24th of June, we'll have leadership development with our Chamber CEO, Henrietta Brearley, who is the youngest CEO in our 200-year history. And really, that'll be diving in to Henrietta's journey to becoming the youngest ever CEO. On the 27th of August, we'll have the joint Future Faces and Birmingham Young Professionals of the Year awards. And there's plenty of ways to get involved with that. You can apply for one of our awards or nominate any colleagues and fellow Future Faces members. You could also get your business involved through sponsorship. To book your free place to watch a digital celebration, please see our events page. All of the links will be circulated after the event for the events I've just mentioned. Now, in order of appearance, I'd just like to introduce our speakers today for this Making Sustainability the Focus webinar. Firstly, we'll have Adam Liddle, Director of Sustainable Growth and Innovation at Jacobs. Jacobs are one of the world's largest and most diverse providers of professional and technical solutions, and Adam's experience spans resource efficiency and the circular economy across various sectors. Recently, Adam's work has led to the company's first climate action plan, and will be speaking on starting conversations around sustainability. Next, we'll hear from Jade Hunt, who is the Group Sustainability Manager at Kier. Kier Group are a UK-based multinational construction business, and Jade has worked in the construction and environmental sustainability sectors for over 20 years. Jade leads on Kier's Zero Waste Working Group and sits on the Group Sustainability Leadership Forum and manages company environmental compliance and environmental management systems. Today, Jade will focus on leadership skills for sustainability. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce Michal Nowinski, who is a highways engineer at Arup. Arup are a global design and engineering firm who focus on consultancy. Michal is a chartered engineer in highways and has over 12 years experience in civil engineering, and is also an executive member on the Future Faces Chamber Committee. He's the 2020 winner of the Future Faces of Industry, a Greater Birmingham Chamber of Commerce Award. And today he'll focus on sustainability trends, actions and job opportunities. So just to let you all know, we'll have a short Q&A at the end, so please do enter any questions into the chat as we go along. And now I'd like to hand over to Adam Liddle, Director of Sustainable Growth and Innovation at Jacobs. Over to you, Adam.
Thank you, Will. I'll just share my screen. Go through a few slides. Okay, so thank you very much, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today, and I'll just take a few minutes to talk about starting sustainability conversations from our perspective, and the journey that we've been on at Jacobs to create a global sustainability strategy and get to the position that we're at now. And it's been quite the journey over the past sort of 3 to 4 years, and a lot of it is focused on kind of raising awareness and educating business stakeholders around priorities as they relate to sustainability. So what I'll just first focus on is on the kind of current landscape. And this is all about kind of changing the business priorities. So in 2020, it was demonstrated that the rising importance of sustainability for business in all sectors. If you go back, say 5, 10, 15 years, I think sustainability has always been a very broad term. it might have been a purely values-based approach. It might have even been quite a tick box exercise that nobody really, there was a lack of understanding on kind of what it fundamentally meant, but it's now becoming a strategic imperative for businesses. And some of those drivers of change include sort of increased public policy regulatory focus on sustainability, looking at that investor interest in ESG related funds. And by ESG, it's really just the kind of financial investor language for sustainability. Looking at the kind of role of business in society in terms of getting more attention. Natural resource constraints on businesses. There's an increasing push for businesses to be more kind of constrained with their consumption of natural resources. And there's also externalities to take into account as well, such as kind of increased frequency of extreme weather events. And what that means for business is then shown on the right-hand side of that slide. So looking at kind of rapid increases in net zero carbon commitments, more attention on kind of equality, diversity and inclusion performance, attention to resilience, so kind of understanding how businesses can become resilient and bounce back from acute shocks or chronic stresses from extreme weather events or longer term stresses. And then also there's on the kind of on the horizon, there's more reporting frameworks and requirements that will likely to be coming. An example given there is around the kind of TCFD, which is the Task Force for Climate Related Financial Disclosures, which is about encouraging businesses to understand their financial risks related to climate change. So this is a kind of captures the kind of shifting landscape and how business priorities have changed into the recent term. But then if we look down across kind of understanding kind of business perspectives from different stakeholder expectations, how they've evolved and how they meet them, I've just mapped out a few kind of business stakeholder groups. And it's always important when you're looking at kind of accelerating and developing a sustainability strategy, it's important to understand what your stakeholders are interested in. So looking at kind of the investor perspective, certainly working in the kind of private sector, shareholders and investors will have a kind of an increased interest in the role of business. And over the past 5 years, I've seen consecutive increases in the amount of money from investments that are applying ESG principles. So looking at kind of sustainability linked funds, and that increase is happening exponentially year on year. Employees are a huge part of any organization. So it's looking at kind of purpose-driven companies that report 30% higher levels of innovation, 40% higher levels of workforce retention than their competition. Boards are now increasingly more engaged with sustainability or ESG issues. And we've recently established an ESG committee within our board of directors. Our clients, your customers, your business customers, they will also be experiencing these shifting priorities as well. And so it's important to understand the challenges that your customers face as well as those of your own. And then there's public perception and regulations that will be applied to businesses as well that will also be a driver in terms of understanding what you should be focusing on. So at Jacobs, we've taken all of those stakeholder perspectives into account in that shifting business landscape and developed a sustainability strategy. We've looked at the kind of materiality across our stakeholder groups and tried to kind of capture what sustainability means for us. And that's captured in that first bullet point there. It means ensuring long-term business resilience and success while positively contributing towards the economy, society, and the environment. Now, we've aligned our strategy to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which, as I'm sure you'll all be aware, they're a universal blueprint for what is meant by sustainable development. And increasingly, businesses and governments are framing sustainability strategies and sustainability objectives around the UN SDGs. So we are now shifting to being more of a purpose-driven organization, and that's captured within our values, our 4 company values. We do things right, we challenge the accepted, we aim higher, and we live inclusion. And it's just a kind of summary slide here around the kind of key outputs from that materiality assessment. So by having these conversations across your different stakeholder groups, you're able to kind of narrow in on the key issues that your clients are most interested in the issues that your board of directors are most interested in, what your employees want to, the type of company they want to work for, your supply chain, which is by far and away the biggest part of any business's operations, investors, private investors, and peers as well across your industry. So they will all have different perspectives. They'll all have different business drivers. And by going through this broad kind of stakeholder consultation exercise, it's really important that you are able to map out those key issues where you can have biggest influence and that are perceived as the most important. And there's just a kind of summary of the key issues there across our different stakeholder groups. On the slide here, this kind of shows the journey that we've been on. So taking that materiality into account. So from 2017 through to December last year, there's a number of different elements that we've kind of pushed through, and incrementally we've built on that materiality exercise, understood where we're going to have biggest impact and what perceived as the biggest and most important issues for us as a company. And we've kind of incrementally built and developed progress around sustainability. So our corporate sustainability team was established in May 2017, moving through to kind of April 19, where we kind of launched, April 2019, where we launched our first Plan Beyond strategy, which is our global sustainability strategy. A few months after that, we compiled our first global carbon footprint, which gives you a baseline for setting quite progressive kind of carbon and emissions reduction targets. April 2020, we launched our first climate action plan, which gave rise to those climate commitments. And moving all the way through to December last year, where we achieved carbon neutrality, we managed to achieve 100% renewable energy for our operations. And we adopted science-based targets, which really focuses on us reducing our absolute emissions within our supply chain to a rate that keeps us within a 1.5 degree net zero world in accordance with IPCC recommendations. So it's not just targets that we've imposed on ourselves as an intensity level, they are absolute targets that recognize external climate science. And that's a very rapid journey. But to actually do that and put that into practice relies on you understanding the perspectives of your different stakeholder groups, being able to communicate on their level, understanding where you can have biggest influence and where you're going to have an impact as a business. And what comes next is that this year we'll be taking it a step further. We've refreshed that materiality exercise, and we're looking at refreshing our Plan Beyond strategy in a version 2. And this looks at kind of building on the foundation that we've set for ourselves, fully operationalizing sustainability across our company, within our operations and through a range of client solutions, putting purpose central to our company strategy so that we're integrating sustainability into the heart of decision-making, and really creating that sustainability mindset across the workforce and affecting that culture change. And it will focus around 6 core priority SDGs. And this will be coming kind of in the months ahead as we move towards refreshing that sustainability strategy. But it all fundamentally comes, to get to this point, it comes from understanding business priorities, stakeholder perspectives, and understanding how to kind of start those conversations around the key issues that are most important to your stakeholder groups. And that's enough from me. I think I'll stop there and I'll hand back to Will.
Thank you, Adam. And that was a really thorough presentation, and I particularly like the focus on stakeholder demands and needs and that materiality as well, to really drive that internal change and those conversations around sustainability. So thank you. I'd just like to bring in our next speaker now, Jade Hunt, who is the Group Sustainability Manager at Kier Group. Over to you, Jade.
Thank you very much. Hopefully you can all see my screen okay. So yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm really pleased to be invited to the event, so thank you to the team for inviting me. My name's Jade Hunt, as mentioned. I'm a Group Environment Manager at Kier. I've worked there for about 11 years now, and I've actually been in the construction industry for about 20 years in the environment sustainability role. Kier's a very large organisation. We've got about 13,000 employees, about a £3 billion turnover. That's gone up and down, obviously, over the years. But I wanted to share some of my knowledge and experience with you. As you can imagine, I've seen a considerable evolution, or even a revolution, in the attitudes to sustainability over the years, both from industry and from the general population as well. So when I began in the construction industry, environmental management was a fairly new concept, and carbon emissions weren't on anyone's agenda at that time. Sustainability as a concept was really just beginning to make its way into the conversation. Now in 2021, we're absolutely clear here at Kier that green is a trend, an ineffective silo, and sustainability is a mindset, which is exactly what Adam just referred to. So it's a way of working that needs to be embedded in every business function and in everything that we do. Kier sees it very simply: resilient environment plus resilient people equals resilient profits. So as an environmental sustainability manager in construction, my role has historically been really quite compliance focused. Environmental teams were often seen as part of the sort of health and safety function. We're seen in a very similar way to that. So technical experts that were there to advise on project planning and monitor compliance during work. And if we were lucky, we might be able to implement an environmental initiative or two, like getting a bug hotel on the site or arranging a packaging take-back scheme. Things have changed quite considerably since then. So in terms of leadership and how that has actually come through our business, I wanted to share a few experiences, a few hints and tips, and the sort of things that I've seen that make for good progress. So in Kier, there has definitely been a sustainability shift in the last couple of years. There's kind of been a perfect storm of events that have kind of created this environment where sustainability can really flourish. There are various reasons for that. Before the last couple of years, we did already have a good track record. We had ISO 14001 for a number of years. We've been involved in lots of industry sustainability initiatives and groups. We were a founding partner of the Supply Chain Sustainability School, all those sort of things. And we were very well regarded in the construction sustainability community. The problem was the environmental team was probably more influential outside the business than it was inside the business. So it already started with the business recognizing the need for a sustainability strategist, not an environmental technical expert. And bringing in some new leadership a couple of years ago to drive that improvement forward. So the immediate work that happened then was all about engaging with the board and the directors and shifting the perception of our function from a compliance team to a strategy delivery team, there to ensure we can meet the needs of our clients and our investors. So the roles and the responsibilities of our team have changed over time, so that environmental managers were able to spend more time on engaging with their business leaders on sustainability and less time checking things like waste transfer notes. It was pointed out to us that ultimately we're salespeople. It's our role to influence other people. So not long after that happened, the UK government then declared a climate emergency and set the UK target to achieve net zero by 2050. The timing was really pretty perfect. The changes we'd already started making meant that the board and the senior leadership team could see the relevance of what we were doing. And then along came COVID. So there was some worry at the time that COVID would actually delay the development and launch of our sustainability framework. But actually it brought sustainability into sharp focus. So most of our business leaders now recognize that sustainability equals resilience. So moving on to the next slide. So speaking different languages to different stakeholders, I can't stress how important this point is. Before we sort of went on this, I hate the word journey, over the last couple of years on sustainability in our business, our team suffered a little bit from what I like to call geek speak. So we were very technical, scientific language about environmental impacts, but a senior leader doesn't know whether 100 tons of CO2 is good or bad and what the context of that is. So absolutely, the need to be able to communicate effectively with people at all levels, and in a construction company, that's people on the tools, on site, doing the job. That's site management, site managers as well. All the support functions that help us deliver what we're trying to do. The senior managers, the board, the CEO, and the clients and customers as well. And you have to adjust how you're talking to suit those individual groups' needs. So to get the attention of the business leaders, you need to speak like business leaders. So putting the issues in commercial terms was really important for us. So our sustainability KPIs are based on the cost of carbon, the cost of waste, the cost of incidents, those sort of things. We also record obviously all the background data, the absolute emissions, all of those sort of things go with that as well. But putting it in the context of cost really helps people to focus on what we're trying to do, which is fundamentally delivering sustainability is delivering efficiencies into the business, making sure we're not wasting energy, water, materials, all those sort of things. So putting it in that context of commercial speak, efficiencies and savings, and also particularly important for us now, investors. So certainly, as was mentioned, I think already in the last couple of years, investors have started really looking at the ESG profiles of the businesses they're investing in. And we needed to be able to speak in their language as well. And again, it's always slightly different. It has a slightly different flavour to it. And also our clients. And some of our clients are very knowledgeable about sustainability and they really know what they want. Some of them want us to lead them there. So we had to be able to speak to them in a way that would help meet their aspirations in terms of what we're delivering for them. So I'm just going to move on to the next slide, sorry, and move on to that one. So one of the analogies that we like to use is using the 6 honest serving men analogy. So the what, why, where, when, how, and who. Basically, just to make sure you are always one step ahead of the next question. Always anticipate what you're going to be asked by your particular audience and be ready for that next question when it comes. Making sure that you know what you're doing, the purpose of what we're doing it, where that's happening, how we're going to get there. People will always ask those questions pretty much in that sequence. A next really key point for us was making sure that we shared ownership and we co-created our new sustainability framework. We, as mentioned before, suffered previously, I think, from working very much in a silo and not interacting well with the different functions and the different levels of our business. So we have to make sure you must accept that where you end up will not always be where you exactly intended. We needed to make sure that cross-functional engagement and drive was there. And our sustainability framework was ultimately created by a team, not by an individual. We all share ownership of the items, the functions, the processes that are going to get us where we're going. A key point and a significant challenge, I think, is your sustainability framework cannot be delivered by the environment or the social sustainability team on their own. It needs the whole business to deliver, and we're there to facilitate that delivery. So we support, we guide, we assist. We don't deliver that as a team. We enable the business to deliver that. And just really the sort of final key point, no simply means not that way. And this is a very important lesson to learn. So when someone tells you a no, it's understanding what is that barrier? Why are they telling you that? And actually, is there just a way of finding a way around to get the ultimate outcome that you need? Maybe even just by putting it in a different language or a different context so that people understand it differently. People will tend to say no to things they don't understand. So putting it in their language and in their context really helps with that. And sometimes you just have to be a little bit sneaky. So you have to know what your ultimate goal is, and you have to work your way around the barriers to get to where you want. So hopefully that would have been a useful bit. I think I may be a bit shorter on time, so I may have left a bit of time for the next speakers as well. But hopefully that's just sort of given you a bit of a flavour of the sort of journey that we've had to go on. That really it's engaging with those different business leaders, getting that language right, and making sure that you're meeting those people's aspirations. Thanks very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jade. And that's very efficient of you to finish before the time as well. It was great to see, you know, some good techniques and principles to consider. Well, when you're focusing on leadership skills for sustainability as well. And next we'll move on to Michal Nowinski, who is our highways engineer at Arup, who will speak on market trends, job opportunities, and sustainability actions for all. So Michal, over to you.
Thank you very much. I hope you all can see my screen, the correct one.
Yes, the correct screen there.
Today I will speak about something about opportunities in transport, in materials, and in actions for all. At the very end, I will say something more about job opportunities related to sustainability and the recent market trends. But first of all, if we discuss about sustainability, we can't forget about net zero, as my previous speaker mentioned. So I'd like to present a short concept of the net zero, how we can understand it. Imagine our planet is the bath, and we would like to have a hot shower or bath. What we emit is efficiently the shower head or a tap. What nature is able to cope is efficiently the drain. And wherever we emit more, its overflow, which may harm our bathroom, means it may harm our planet. So this is why it's very important to understand the net zero. We can put extra tap, but together with extra drain. So why I mentioned about transport and net zero? Because transport is one of the biggest emitters of carbon dioxide in terms of the industry. And the various means of transport emits various levels of carbon dioxide, which are presented on a slide. What's important and why I took one slide from Australia, because it clearly states that there is a big difference between the same electric vehicle connected to the traditional and electricity grid, which could be up to comparable value to the standard car, and the top range, the same vehicle connected to the green electricity means carbon neutral electricity. So it's not only about mode of transport, but also about a source of energy. Again, there is and they are emerging technologies such as electric or hydrogen, electric aircrafts which are going to be introduced within next 4 or 5 years, or electric HGVs manufactured by a number of producers. In contradictory to this, they are second branch, the hydrogen. Again, lead aircraft manufacturers work on 2034, 2035 commercial launch the hydrogen aircraft, as well as for more ground transport in Taisley Energy Park, there is going to be low carbon and hydrogen filling station for the future years, and West Midlands purchase of hydrogen hydrogen buses. Again, some of our companies must invest in new properties or consider different materials, such as if thinking about construction, why not choose timber as a main structure? On the slide, you can see in the Sky Believing Better Building is one of the Arup's top environmentally friendly schemes, where you can read more about in the link on the screen. Timber is known from centuries as even potentially carbon positive material, as it during the growth it absorbs carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, combining to the actually construction material. But it's not timber may not be only about construction. It could be also part of our daily routine, like pen or another or majority of other stuff. Other sustainable materials are plant-based plastic rather than fossil-based plastic, which should be biodegradable within 12 months. It could be either for toys, for single-use cutlery, or many other elements. And this slide shows how to partially how to not use materials like the sweet but wrap is probably slightly older than me. Then how not to use or how not to throw it away. However, for further consideration is the way of using multiple use things rather than single use things. Okay, what are the actions we can do? The first thing would be limit travel. I know we are after over a year lockdown overall, so alternatively, please do some research about going by more sustainable mode, whether it's electric bus, whether it's electric train, or maybe you could have an electric car hire. I don't want to say don't travel. I'd like to say travel responsibly. Think about the planet during your travel. Then we can choose many of materials. If we need to purchase something, please think about could I choose things from recycled materials? Could I reuse things such as from small things like second blank piece of paper to more and more? Other people found a genius idea of converting the used chewing gum into skateboard wheels. So that's another point of being sustainable. Rather than putting something into landfill, reprocess it, and then go digital as much as possible to limit wastes at all. What else we can do? We can choose energy providers, as I mentioned earlier on one of on my slides, that is not only about mode of transport, but about source of energy. Following the one of the energy companies, those 5 absolutely is not advertisement, claims that their energy is 100% renewable. That's great. That's perfect. But we must understand the difference between a renewable and carbon neutral. 2 examples. For example, current generation of nuclear reactors are carbon neutral, as in their process there is no, in theory, carbon emission. However, biomass, which is renewable, is not always carbon neutral, as during the burning biomass there might be some emissions. So it's also important to be conscious about the source of energy and its impact to the planet. One of the last things I'd like to raise about actions is to be engaged with suppliers. It's important our organizations ask our suppliers what their practices are. It's important to collaborate with others to ask them by many customers. If any organization feels pressure from their customer or clients, they ultimately make a change. If our organization set a public target for the supply chain to give them clarity of the expectations, and then your competitors will not stay behind. They will join you, and together you will make a real difference. So the last part of the sustainable actions is to influence policies. For a couple of years, there was information about the Birmingham Clear Air Zone. Recently, I also remember the Sprint Bus Rapid Transit system for West Midlands, which is under construction now. That's why I'd like to encourage you, please look at the consultation, influence policies, actively participate, think about impact to your business, and propose improvement if you see any. I also promised you to mention about job opportunities. So based on what I presented, there is huge opportunity in material engineering, how to reprocess something and not create a waste, but reprocess and create something better in the next cycle. Electrical and hydrogen, or maybe some new fuel engineering, is also a emerging job opportunity. IT developers, as it's still everything goes and more and digital. Then sustainability advisory consultant. If some organizations aren't sure what they can do, I'm sure there is a number of organizations such as Arup or others which are happy to advise in sustainability practices. And for the carbon dioxide neutralization specialists, for example, there was a case of experimental conversion the carbon dioxide from cut into ink. So what are overall market trends? There is a lot of policies such as net zero. West Midlands Combined Authority issued the 2041 net zero policy. There are a lot of exclusive deals such as green mortgages or green bonds. There's a whole branch called circular economy. The more focus is now on working remotely to limit transport and emissions related. And there is gradually more higher importance of how it's delivered, not necessarily how much does it cost. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michal. That was a really good presentation, and I thought it was particularly interesting to see the difference in carbon emissions for flying when compared to train. It really does, hit home and gives you further context with that. But also the chewing gum and skateboard wheels is a particularly interesting one, especially given the reuse of a resource like that. So thank you for that presentation. And now we'll move on to any questions. I can see we've already had some questions in the chat. So I would urge you all, if you do have any questions, please pop them in the chat and I can direct them to the relevant panelists. But Jade, I believe this first one is for you on key performance indicators, and really the questions from Josh Pope. And he's asking if there is any standardized or recommended conversion factor for metrics. So, for example, with CO2 emissions, is there a standardized metric that you could peg the cost against? Or, is this just a carbon tax? How exactly would that work? So, yeah, Jade, if you'd like to come in.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, it's a very good question. Fundamentally, what we had to do was start simple. So straightforward, nice, easy way to do it at the very beginning is just what is the cost of energy? And fundamentally, that is a cost we can give for carbon. We are looking at refining that and looking at more sophisticated ways of measuring that cost over time. Again, looking at things like business mileage, you can look at the cost of business mileage claims, but not all of that cost is specifically carbon related. So we are making that more refined over time. But even as a starting point, just looking at the cost of energy to a particular business. So we have 4 or 5 key major business streams within Kier. We were able to tell one of them, and they were quite surprised at the time, that they'd spent £17 million on energy the previous year. And just making a small incremental change on that over time was going to be a significant saving for them as a business to become more efficient. But yeah, start simple and then become more sophisticated, I think, is the way to do it. And as I say, we're kind of still working on the details of how we're going to be measuring that going forward. But even just as a starting point, that initial cost of energy was a good wake-up call for a lot of people.
Great, thank you, Jade. So it's really about keeping sustainability simple in the first instance, and then building on that once you've got the really great framework in place. We've also had a question from Joe C, and I believe this is just open to all the panel, so you can fight over who's first here. So what are your tips for integrating sustainability and ensuring it doesn't remain in technical silos or committees? So those key tips to really making sure it doesn't stay in the technical sphere or just into the people that are interested. I don't know if anyone would like to open us up on that.
I can have a stab, Will. So for us, there's lots of ways that we are trying to do this at the moment across Jacobs, and there's a lot of it is around kind of the visibility and the prominence of the strategy, the business strategy at the highest level. Where does how much importance and priority is given to sustainability strategy as it relates to the core company strategy, and how does that then permeate down across all the different markets in which we operate, all the different sectors across where we have clients. And if you start to then look across the different markets, there'll always be examples of where a sustainability benefit has derived value for a client. And that could be financial or non-financial value. And we have systems and ways of capturing that value and telling that story internally so that other teams in other geographies or other sectors can then relate to that saving, to that value. And often it could be related to a change, just a kind of streamlining of how a project has been managed. It could relate to a design innovation. It could relate to a kind of community impact that you've had through kind of project delivery. There could be so many different ways in which that value is derived. And the impact that could then have across the business just generates a ripple effect. But a lot of it is about kind of capturing that value and then telling the story so that it can be relatable to others across the organization. And that in itself will kind of create a culture and will break down the silos.
Absolutely, I'd agree with that. Sorry, I was just going to jump.
That's all right.
No, I'd absolutely agree with that. Demonstrating value in all its forms, you will be able to find something of interest for anyone that you're trying to convince in that sustainability framework. But I mean, just to take it back to an example in Kier, you know, I mentioned that a couple of years ago, the environmental team was very much kind of sitting as this silo in the business, and we used to have meetings regularly and we talk a lot and great stuff, but going then and actually implementing change in the business was really hard. And one of the things that we have brought in is we have a series of sustainability leadership forums now in each of the different parts of the business. And those forums are headed up by an MD or a financial director. They're not headed up by an environment sustainability person. They are formed by commercial people who need to be there to understand the impact or give us information about the materials that we buy that we can work out the embodied carbon for. We need to make sure those people are there. We've got design teams sitting around those tables. We have, yes, we have SHE people and we have environmental people as well, but it's about getting all of those functions sitting around the table. And then ultimately we have a group level sustainability leadership forum, and that's chaired by our CEO. So again, it's just demonstrating how important it is at that senior level. And that really, as Adam just said, that really helps to sort of trickle that down into the business. When people see that the senior leaders and directors are chairing these forums, they're realizing this isn't just a little siloed activity that's being done by the environmental team. This is fundamental to every process within our business.
Excellent. Thank you, Jade. Really good answers there to that question. And next we have a few questions from Jason. So I'm just going to pick out a few because there's quite a lot there. So this is directed at Adam, but I'm sure others can come in on this as relevant. And I think a good question here is really how do we keep up the pace of executing sustainability initiatives in less developed countries? So if we had that global approach, I guess what are the challenges, and how do we really keep them on board with the standards that are I guess higher in more developed countries? I don't know if Adam you'd like to start on that.
Yeah, it's not an easy question to answer, to be honest, because I can see the question as it's written. It comes down to infrastructure and resilience to withstand shock. So when we're talking about kind of sustainability broadly, a lot of the issues kind of underpinned that are captured in the UN Sustainable Development Goals, that covers the broad gamut of sustainability, and a lot of them are impacted by climate change. And climate change will have an impact on the most vulnerable in the world because there is a lack of infrastructure there, whether that be physical infrastructure or social infrastructure to kind of create that resilience within communities to withstand shocks and to progress. And I think the principles are still the same. So when you're looking at building in kind of adaptation, mitigation, and resilience strategies in a developed city, country, region, you look at kind of understanding where are the strengths and weaknesses within that system, within that resilience system. Where are the impacts going to be most greatly felt, and how can you plan to design and build resilience in so that something is designed for the long term and it can project economic development, social progress, and environmental protection. The principles are still the same within developing countries, but the challenges are much greater because you've got a lot of other issues to take into account around how governments are set up, around how communities function, around kind of just how they access kind of basic human needs. There's a lot more. The issues are a lot more complex. I was speaking to one of my colleagues in Manila just this morning, and this is kind of relating to to COVID and how governments are set up to adapt and kind of change their priorities. And she was telling me about her experiences and the kind of impact and the government messages and the priorities around COVID is just very, very different. And that's an example of just one country trying to deal with a resilience issue around health and health security. There's no easy answer to it. but the principles are still the same. It's just there's a lot more layers of complexity when it comes to looking at developing communities.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you for answering a very complex question so well. I believe that's taken us to the end of our event today. So thank you all for attending this event, and I'm sure there'll be plenty more similar ones to come. So thank you very much for attending, and thank you to all our panelists as well.